Salve família modular, sejam todos muito bem-vindos a mais um episódio no nosso podcast aqui semanal. Hoje trouxemos uma figura ilustre na nossa saga de conhecer pessoas e trazer conteúdo, pessoas fora da curva do nível internacional. E hoje com a gente veio o Brandan lá da Pull Together. E aí, Curi?
Pô, um gigante aí. O cara já foi CTO da Pull Together, é um dos cofundadores. Agora tá construindo, ainda não abandonou o projeto, continua construindo. Foi um papo irado, viu, Guelph? Trouxemos aí um protocolo que é o Dino ecossistema, tá construindo aí desde 2019, tá com quase 5 anos já, como a gente mencionou.
Nunca foi
Nunca foi
hackeado.
hackeado, cara. Eu achei isso incrível, incrível. Um protocolo bastante robusto aí e que oferece um produto, Guelph, infinitamente vezes melhor do que os produtos tradicionais aí, com um risco baixíssimo, cara. Gostei demais aí de ouvir sobre a V5. Muita novidade também chegando. O Pull Together entregando cada ano uma novidade diferente, né, Guelph?
Exatamente. Então, se você não sabe o que é a Pull Together, nós temos um artigo maravilhoso feito ali pelo time da Modular, vai estar aqui no link, aqui na descrição. Então, olhem o artigo, se interem o que é a Pull Together e essa nova versão, a V5, que promete coisas interessantíssimas ali, a poder criar uma pool permissionless, qualquer ativo, e você tem rentabilidade em cima. Então, bastante interessante. Pull Together é, de fato, um dos meus protocolos favoritos, né? O fato de você ter aquela sua reserva de emergência em cripto, qual protocolo pensar? Ou é um protocolo de empréstimo ou a Pull Together, que te dá chance ainda de ganhar mais dinheiro. Então, bastante interessante. Confira aí o episódio, ficou bacana demais. É isso, né, Curi?
Exatamente. Bora lá, Guelph.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, trying to bring new guests in, right? International guests. This time we have a special one all the way from Pull Together. Brandan, welcome to our show. How you doing, man?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for the introduction. Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, before we even get started talking about Pull Together, introduce yourself. Let us know what you do at Pull Together, what you've been building this past bear market.
Yeah. So, the many bear markets. It's actually been more than one. That's how long we've been building. We've been building Pull Together for the last 5 years. Actually, it'll be 5 years in April. So it's been a long time. And for a protocol we were one of the ancients, one of the old ones. But Pull Together has gone through a number of different transitions in that time. We actually just released version 5. So we've basically been releasing one per year since our inception. And as a result, we've gone through many different iterations of what Pull Together is and can be. My role is what I served as for the first 4 years is CTO Pull Together Incorporated. So PT Inc. was the company that incepted the original protocol. And now, since then, we've actually, I've started a second company that is operating as a development shop that is servicing the Pull Together protocol, the DAO, essentially, the Pull Together token holders that control the treasury. And but that being said, I'm basically doing the same thing, building more things for Pull Together, improving the protocol. It's just in a slightly different format these days. So still serving a very similar role and pushing forward. So I'm really excited to talk about Pull Together today. You found the right person.
Yes, that's awesome. I mean, before we even delve into the new exciting details of the new version 5 design, which is pretty exciting to be honest, let's set the stage for our listeners before. Could you give us a comprehensive overview of what Pull Together is all about? Specifically, we're very interested in understanding its core mission,
Yeah.
how it operates, what sets apart in the DeFi ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So Pull Together is a prize savings protocol. And so prize savings is where everyone deposits into the protocol. And in our case, every day, the yield on all of those deposits is awarded as prizes. And what's so cool about this primitive is that it gives you a high upside, so a chance to win an inordinate amount of money, but you never lose your principal. So it's also called a no-loss lottery. In the UK, they call them premium bonds. And so this is an existing financial primitive in the real world that we've now imported into and rebuilt in the crypto world. And the reason it works so well is because it is verifiably random, it's provably fair, it's fully transparent, and it's incredibly low risk. You can see your money at all times. You know where it is. You can withdraw at all times. It's fully liquid. There's nothing obfuscating, what's going on behind the scenes in a kind of Wizard of Oz way. So in this way, crypto is a really great use case for this, especially because we have tech like verifiable random numbers that can provide this kind of additional layer of fun on top of the predictability of blockchain. So.
Awesome. Brandan, before we dive deep into V5, I want to ask you a philosophical question. You just said that you guys are almost completing 5 years into building Pool together. And I want to ask you, what's the biggest learning you guys got in all those years?
The biggest learning, the biggest lesson. There are so many. There are like, I don't even know where to begin. I think I would say the learnings have been distilled in this version of Pool Together that we've shipped. It runs the gamut from how governance should be, my opinion of governance, to my opinion of how protocol should function. And I think one of the biggest lessons that we learned initially was that, and this is kind of counterintuitive, but the more ownership that you give to people, the more valuable something becomes. So I feel like, and this is kind of what crypto unlocks, is this ability for people to own something, whether it's fractional or NFT or whatever. And distributing ownership to a lot of people makes something valuable. And so rather than kind of, collect something as closely as you can, you distribute it and you give it away. And this means that more people have a stake in it, more people have a say in it, more people have ownership of it. And that's been something that's been really enlightening with this whole process. And we've seen that play out in terms of prizes. We've seen that play out in terms of the Pool token, in terms of ownership of the protocol. And that is probably the most counterintuitive lesson. That being said, there are dozens of lessons, and I could talk endlessly about this, but I would handpick that as one relevant to now. So.
My first experience put together was, I think, was back in 2021. I'm not sure. Anyways, it was live on mainnet, right? Ethereum. I think the gas was kind of higher back then. And then I noticed one of the critics was, okay, I put some amount of money, but then someone else, a whale, put a lot of money. They got higher chance to winning, right? So I'll never win here. So that was my first experience. But I know Pull Together has evolved since then. And then getting the V5 new design, I want to ask you, how has Pull Together evolved from its initial versions to the latest V5, and what are the key improvements or changes that you guys introduced into the V5?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I think what you're speaking to, and this might go back to like V3 and earlier, with the very, very old versions of Pool Together, we had a limited number of winners. So like 3, 5 kind of thing. Those kind of numbers work for small amounts of liquidity, small numbers of users, but they don't scale with, like, let's say you have thousands of users, let's say you have millions in liquidity. We found that in particular with V3, that was a problem with V3. And so what happened in V4 is we actually, which was launched at the end of 2021. So I'm not sure if you tried V3 or V4, but V4 was focused on L2, so I'm guessing V3. But in V4, we created a statistical system that allowed us to have virtually unlimited number of prizes. So we could have thousands of prizes if we wanted to. We could have prizes down to one way if we wanted to, although, of course, gas costs of claiming and so on and so forth, it's not practical. And so that really opened things up for us. And we actually, some members of the DAO formed the prize team, where they actually designed the prize distribution to be optimal so that people would be There would still be a high upside. We'd still have a big prize, but there'd still be lots of little prizes going out so that people were being rewarded. So it was kind of like, if you imagine kind of a saddle. You've got a lot at the upper end and then a lot at the bottom end. So people are kind of always making sure they get a little bit of something. What's happened with V5 is we've now, after the learnings of V4, we've now codified that structure into a fully automated system that now adapts to the amount of liquidity. So if there's a low amount of liquidity, there's only 3-4 prizes. If there's a ton of liquidity, the system will adapt and create more and more prizes to match the number of users. And so in that way, we've really iterated and improved on that. The other major improvement for V5 is that you don't need to go claim your prizes. They get automatically sent to you. And so we've created an incentivized claim system that has these kind of bots basically claiming prizes on people's behalf for costs of anywhere, I think major prizes, it's actually less than 1%, but for the tiny prizes, like the daily, like most common prize, it's like 10% fee kind of thing. But what's interesting is that because these bots are operating in batches, they actually have gas costs and the economies of scale by claiming together. So the fee is less than the cost of gas would be otherwise if you were claiming. So it's I'm really happy with the system. It's been working really well so far. And I'd say that's one of the biggest distinguishing factors of V5. Another one, which was one that was fairly challenging to solve, but I'm very happy with what we came up with, was the fact that, so we talk about prize savings. It's about savings. People want to hold certain tokens. Maybe you want to hold ETH. Maybe you want to hold Link. Maybe you want to hold whatever other token. And they still want to be able to participate in prize savings. They want to just deposit whatever they have. You don't have to swap into a certain token and then deposit. Even though initially we focused on stables because that generally was the safest holdings for a lot of people. We've seen some faults of USDC in terms of liquidity issues, potentially, with Silvergate failure. We've seen USDC get locked for certain people. And so having a wider breadth of assets that we accept has been really important. But with V3 and the earlier versions, each asset was a separate prize pool, which meant that if you wanted to add a new asset, you had to bootstrap the prize liquidity. You had to just inject a bunch of cash so that there'd be a reason for people to deposit. With this latest version of the system, we support any number of assets. And that's because we're actually combining the liquidity into a single token. And that means that you can spin up a new vault. Actually, we're doing so today. We're spinning up a USDC vault on Optimism, which is the correct or like true USDC, not the bridged one. There are people, man,
The native
there's so many
one, they
UX
call it.
problems with crypto, but this is a good one where people are coming with USDC. They're like, why can't I deposit this? What the heck is
Yes.
USDE? Like, there's still a lot of things we need to solve, but it now means that we can do these kind of transitions. We can easily add these new assets as they're realized, and so this is a huge big plus in V5 as well. So we can now combine all these different assets into a single pool of prize liquidity. So I'd say those are probably the two main distinguishing features that make this much more, I guess, easier to use for the end user. There are some back-end things as well, which are really exciting in terms of the system just being fully autonomous, that doesn't need any kind of governance control. We've been like this for a long time in terms of custody. We have not had custody of users' funds at any point since V2, I guess. And this has been critically important. We believe that users should always have full control over their funds and no one else should be able to touch them. Governance has always been seen as a potential risk vector, and we have always wanted to mitigate that. But with this new version, governance doesn't even have controls that they can tweak. And this means that the system is truly a foundation on which other teams can build. So, there's going to be no kind of changing of logic or mechanisms. And like if a company decides to build on Pool together, they can do so reliably for the indefinite future, which I think is really exciting and gives a lot of trust to partners as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. Brandon, when I enter the Pull Together website nowadays, I have two choices. I can use V5 or use V4. But when I enter V5, I can choose between Cabana app or Pool Time app. What is
Mhm.
the difference between these two?
Yeah, so Pool Time was developed by another team in the community, and it's another interface to pull together V5. And so we have Cabana, which is developed by the dev shop that I run, Generation, and then Pool Time is developed by the Pool Time team from the Pool Together DAO. So it's in that sense, like if one of these apps goes down, you can use the other one. So it's there's a certain amount of redundancy built in. What we're also working on, though, is we're also working on deeper integration with wallets and whatnot, so that even if one of these front ends goes down or Etherscan goes down, there's always going to be a way for you to interact with your deposits. I mean, that's the beauty of the decentralized protocol. It isn't any one interface; it's any interface. And so it's really cool to see how that's actually played out, and it's very real. We have another team building on it. With the V4, we are working on a migration plan, and so that is actually underway right now. Is that will eventually be wound down, and the we'll have incentives for migration and whatnot. So that is happening. That's in the works, but we're kind of in this transitionary period where V4 still exists, and I mean, it's not like we can. I mean, we can't really shut it down. We can just ignore it, really. So users will always be able to play with it if they want to. I mean, it'll exist in perpetuity, but in terms of hosting the front end and whatever other infrastructure, it'll slowly be wound down.
Yeah.
Yeah, pull together is one of the protocols that really has adopted a progressive approach to like decentralization, decentralized protocol, decentralized front end, and now it's permissionless. I mean, could you elaborating on this strategy and the significance to the platform in general?
Yeah, I mean, the permissionless one I think is interesting because we have had so much experience as one of the early governance systems of trying to build a DAO, trying to build a system where the protocol is controlled by these token holders, the pool token holders. And there was an incredible amount of friction in terms of allowing people to experiment with the technology that we've developed. And that was because in order for them to like get into the front end, in order for them to integrate with the protocol, it required all these governance approvals and all this like hoops that they had to jump through. And so it was really prohibitive for people to get started playing with this stuff. So the permissionless tech is not just for to allow us to scale easily. It means that we can start experimenting and we can develop rapidly. It actually unlocks everybody, not just the people, newcomers that want to contribute. For example, us adding these new vaults, we're just doing this. No one's approving this. We're just doing it. And that kind of ease of simplicity is what is going to make the system so powerful is there won't be any governance checks, there won't be any approvals. We'll simply start combining more liquidity into the prizes, and the system just works. And we can't. There's no way we can hack at that. It's just going to function as such. So permissionless, I think, has been is going to be a huge unlock for us, and we're already feeling that as a contributing team. In that, oh yeah, we can just do this. We don't have to make a proposal. There's no proposals to do things. I feel like, and this has actually started happening. It started happening a while ago, but the shine of governance is wearing off. The realities of shared coordination with thousands of people and the inability of that decision making to scale, I think, is really starting to become evident for a lot of people, for a lot of different teams. And so I think we're trying to take our first steps towards eliminating that entirely. And it was also evident in terms of not only, but like I guess this is related to parameter control, but governance really serves two purposes, right? Or it can. One, controlling money. And that's primarily the way most people use DAOs. They are combining funds to buy NFTs or what have you. That is a very high level DAO, like essentially a partnership. And then you have the ability to control parameters or like basically approve certain additions of certain vaults. In the case of Aave, they approve new lending markets. And we also found over the past 3 years, people love deciding how to spend money. That is like such an easy thing for people to do. Granted, there's a whole accountability side to things, which we don't need to get into, but in terms of spending the money, it's very easy for people to spend money. But the parameter control is difficult. The parameter control requires experts, and it's not something that should necessarily be delegated to a group of people that might have other, I guess, intents with that control, with that token. So the ability for it to be permissionless is also useful in that context, and that we're not relying on non-experts. We allow people to focus instead on dispersal of the treasury and just keep things simple in general to the token holders. The other aspect I like about it, so we've got permissionless, and the autonomous is really powerful. So not only is we not delegated to any particular entity, but no one controls it. It's sort of like Uniswap in this sense, in that it just runs. It just runs in perpetuity, and that's incredibly powerful in that you don't need to. You're not waiting on anyone to flip a switch or to tune some parameters. The system just works, and it comes from our years of experience with, designing the price distribution structure. And so that in itself is, as well, as a huge unlock. So, I mean, I could just keep talking. Give me another question. I've got so much more for you guys.
Yeah, but like I think we agree with you regarding like the minimizing governance, like organizing and coordinating people from all over the world to like one simple thing is not as simple as it seems. But moving on, Brandan, I would say that Put Together is a battle tested protocol right now. But what measures has Put Together implemented to ensure the security and integrity of its draws and price distributions? I think that's a very good question, and particularly in the context of potential attacks like front running. What have you guys implemented in the back end to avoid that?
Oh, for front running. I mean, that's very specific, but let's start with security, just in general. Like, what have we done for security? I'm very proud that we've never had a hack. Pull Together has never been hacked. We pulled together V3, peaked at $250 million, and still nothing happened. And I believe our security practices have been really solid, and that's what's gotten us there. Our diligence in testing and our conservativeness in expanding and integrating new protocols. If we had expanded willy-nilly and integrated every single protocol out there, we would have been extremely exposed. But we focused on the blue chips, Compound originally, now Aave, and we are looking to others like Morpho that have a similar security stance. So we've really focused on those protocols. That being said, one other thing, coming back to the permissionless nature, anyone can spin up any kind of vault. And what's interesting about that is that it becomes less about gatekeeping by governance and more about curation by the front end. What are you showing your users? There are all sorts of different things you can do with the protocol. You could do dangerous things with the protocol if you want to, but we're not going to show that to our users. So that's just an interesting aside. But in terms of maintaining the security, we have gone through a rigorous number of audits, and audits have really been something that has helped us a lot. What's been interesting, though, is to see how the landscape has changed of audits. Originally, when we were engaging with firms, 4 to 5 years ago, we were typically interacting with like one person or two people. It was a fairly small effort. Those teams still exist. That style still exists. But we eventually moved on from that towards engaging with small teams, groups of people of 2 or more that really looked at the code and had their own processes in terms of checks and balances with each other. But more recently, and we're now seeing other copycats, we've been using a competition instead. And so instead of having just a few select experts look at the code, we've been leaning more and more heavily on public auditing competitions, in particular the Surface Code arena. There are others that do it. But what we do is we actually publish the code publicly before launching, and people compete to come up with or find security holes. And they're actually competing for a pot of money that we put out there for them to take a portion of. And so what's great about that is that everybody thinks differently. And being able to engage with dozens of people, all these different brains and their understandings and the expertise that they have, because everyone is shaped differently. Some people are good at math, some people are have deep insights into other protocols. And by leveraging this kind of hive mind of their community, we've actually seen really high quality results in that have created basically mitigation lists. I'm not sure how to say that really well, but basically their reports are, dollar for dollar, really competitive with, expert auditing firms. That being said, we still use both, still use the auditing firms. That was actually really interesting. Our most recent audit for V5, we used both. We had a competition as well as having individual researchers or a small team of researchers look at it. And it was interesting to see what one team got and what the other team didn't. The individual researchers, the small groups, are very penetrating but less broad, while the competition was extremely broad and they covered a lot of ground. They found all the little details, but some of the more penetrating aspects they did not necessarily turn up. So there's still qualities in both that are valuable, but having the broad as well as a few penetrating looks at the code has been very, very helpful. In addition, internally, we do fuzz testing. We do 100% unit test coverage. We just make sure, like, the best security practices start with your engineering team. Your engineering team needs to make sure that it knows exactly how the code functions and what are the holes, what can we plug here. And what's nice about the external auditors is they kind of are the ones that you're almost rubber ducking. You bounce these security approaches across them, like, hey, we mitigated front running of the random number by, referencing only past deposits in terms of eligibility, things like that, which get scrutinized by an external team so that we're not just drinking our own Kool-Aid, and they really tell us whether or not that works. And so it's a lot of different facets. There's no silver bullet when it comes to security. Auditing is just one thing you can do, but a lot of internal reviews and checks and tests have really proved to be valuable for us. We've even found during this is another thing we did actually more recently, is we ran a public beta, and so we actually launched a version to mainnet and had a very it was limited in scope in that we only invited certain people from our community to be able to use it, but it meant that we could test the thing in production, and there's nothing like a production environment. And we actually found a few important security holes ourselves in it. And so that was another phase of testing that we went through to make sure that we got things right. And that just meant that when it came time to deploy, the true code, it was good. It was solid. It was tight. And so far, so good. So, but there's nothing like time and money, That is the Lindy that we're looking for. So this thing just needs to live for longer and longer and have more and more TVL, and that will just grow our confidence in the code that much more.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. You just talked about the copycats, and one that comes to my mind is Symmetrics. I don't know if you heard about this protocol. Do you have any thoughts on them, their implementation of the pull together code?
Oh, do you mean asymmetrics?
Yes,
Like
asymmetrics.
the fork of Pool Together. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of a hybrid of V3, V4. I looked at the code, and it's just kind of amazing how, the code is GPL'd, and I guess they've also GPL'd their code, but there's just no attribution. It's just sort of like, oh, okay, well, and to some extent, this is a superpower, is making code open source like this. We actually, our dev shop forked the Pool code from PT Inc. because it was licensed so liberally. And so it also helps us move forward very quickly. But with asymmetrics, they're yield farming their governance token, right? Or actually, I don't even know if it does any kind of governance right now, but they're yield farming some kind of token. So it's kind of apples and oranges right now, but we just finished putting the finishing touches on our reward system for V5. And we're going to start farming OP pretty soon. And so it'll be good for Optimism users to start earning rewards as well. Rewards are the name of the game. That's really the competitive edge for a lot of these different protocols, is the redistribution of tokens. So once we have that additional base reward, I think people will be, really happy to see that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna love that. I'm sure. Brandon, moving on here, I want to ask you, like, how does Put Together like ensure a seamless and engaging experience for its users, especially the one like that are new to DeFi?
Well, something that we're really excited about with V5 is how simple it is. The very first version of Pool Together, you deposit into it, and then if you won, you got the prize. Theoretically, if you were able to swap into those prize assets, that's all you need to do. And so with this new V5 experience, we're actually promoting AMM liquidity. So Uniswap V3 liquidity, which is almost like one-to-one, because the prize assets are basically just wrapped versions of the other assets. So you have USDC and then prize USDC pairs. So it's really easy and cheap to swap in, because users like using AMMs. They like just swapping into tokens. And with V5, what we've enabled is now you can just swap into Pool Together and you just start winning prizes. You actually don't even need to visit our UI. You don't even need to use the app anymore. And this is why we think that V5 is really a good initial user experience, because it's as simple as possible. It doesn't get any simpler than this. Hold a token, win prizes, easy peasy.
Looking ahead in the future, do you see more front ends being spin out and using the pull together code in the back end?
Well, that's a bigger question. What's interesting about that is that there are a lot of people that there's kind of two camps, right? There's some people that believe there will be one wallet and many dApps. Others that believe there'll be many wallets, each having many dApps inside of it. There's kind of two camps here in terms of how protocols get integrated across these different systems. And this is one reason why we have multiple front ends. And so, yes, we will ideally have multiple dApps. And why we're also pursuing wallets themselves, because wallets have custom integrations. Like Argent is a good example of a wallet that fully gatekeeps any kind of protocols inside of the wallet itself. And so I think there's kind of two avenues of approach here. One is we get these prize assets available and promoted in these wallets. And two, we have more than one dApp that is promoting the Pool Together assets so people can swap in easily. So there's different facets to this. I think what's interesting about the dApps, and we might see this more and more, but at least with Pool Together V4, we did have a friendly fork by one of our community members that created a version of V4 Pool where half the yield went to building wells in, where was it? Actually, I can't remember where it was, but they managed to fund the building of a well, which was pretty awesome to see this kind of philanthropy. And it was promoted through a separate front end. And so I do think we'll see people utilize this even more in the same kind of way, where there's perhaps a percentage that's put towards like UNICEF or just different ways of using this money, different ways of using this cash flow machine. And it'll be important to have different ways to view that. So in that way, yes, I do think there'll be more than one dApp. All the code that we provide is open source. People can fork it. But I do also want to focus on the wallets themselves. Wallets for a lot of people on their phone is the portal to DeFi, and really want to make that as smooth as possible.
Brandan, what's the delegation feature Put Together?
Yeah, delegation's cool. Basically, you can deposit or with your prize assets, if you're just holding them, you can delegate to an address. And that means that you still hold your collateral, but they have your chance of winning. And so it means that, like, say, for example, if you want to introduce someone to DeFi, you can just delegate to their wallet and they'll start winning prizes with your chance to win. And so it separates the chance from the collateral so that we have a bit more flexibility there. There's another instance that we want to apply, and this is actually something we're working on right now. But imagine you can delegate your chance to an NFT collection. So any owner of those NFTs will win prizes randomly. And so if your chance gets delegated to, say, Bored Apes, then the prizes you would have received get dispersed randomly to different Bored Apes. And we think this is going to be a big unlock because it allows us to you could potentially add utility to any NFT, or even just create NFT chance to win and mint them, and then have another way of distributing prize assets that way. So yeah, the delegation is a very powerful technique that in terms of distributing pool together, distributing chance.
Yeah, definitely. That unlocks a lot of things for communities in crypto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brandan, I have to ask you something. You have to explain to us, what is this bird behind you? Tell us the story about Pooly, please.
Oh, Pooly. Yeah. Yeah, Pooly is funny. So way back, when was this? This is shortly after we launched governance. So I think this would have been 3 years ago. One of our longtime community members, Oops, and Oops is actually the Zapper community manager for a while. I don't know
Yeah,
if you know.
we
Yeah, you
met
know
him.
Oops. Yeah,
Yeah, we
Oops
met
is
him.
great. I love him. He's awesome. And he created this just randomly, this little bird character, this purple bird character that people began to run with and use as our mascot. And we really liked it. We thought it was cool that the community created something that became kind of like our I don't know, our Clippy. Can I say that? Is that cool? But regardless, our like little anthropomorphic mascot. And what ended up happening is that due to our which have now ended actually, but due to this kind of litigation that occurred with Pool Together Incorporated for about a year and a half, we had to go and essentially have people donate to a legal fund. And so we had another artist, David Smith, really great artist. He's the guy that created Distracted Dudes and the Pooly itself behind you. And he created the 3D Pooly you see, the kind of more, I guess, higher res version of Pooly. And we created 3 variants. I should pull up the website. But basically, there was like a lawyer Pooly, there was a judge Pooly, and a supporter Pooly, and we were able to raise funds to fight the legal case. But since then, Pooly has become even more entrenched as a real official part of the Pool Together brand. And this particular head size Pooly was originally on a stick. And so we had a big Pool Together event, and we had a bunch of these Pooly heads on sticks. And so we took a group photo, and everybody had these Pooly faces. So it was a lot of fun. But this is originally from an event from a long time ago. So yeah, I forgot that it was behind me, but
Yeah.
kind of
And
appropriate.
any plans for other events?
Other events?
Yeah.
For the time being, no. The person that put on PoolyCon in Denver last year, it was a big effort, and so they'll be taking it easy. But something we are looking to get into more hackathons and sponsor more hackathons. But in terms of real life get-togethers, your best bet is probably just being in New York, because my ex co-founder Leighton lives there, and he often does Pooly get-togethers. But in terms of official things, not for the time being. I think we're really focused on spending our time on adoption, on hackathons, on like events, like digital events, because that seems to be the strongest activation. But someday, I'm sure there'll be another one at some point.
Yes. Yes, of course, of course. Brandan, I have to ask you, man, like the V4 was on Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, and Optimus.
Mm-hmm.
How is Put Together dealing with the multi-chain ecosystem? Any plans to expand to other ecosystems?
Yeah, this is a good question. So yeah, originally, where to begin with this? Essentially, the new version of Pool Together V5, relies on the pool token. So the pool token is what consolidates liquidity from all these different yield sources down into a single pool of price liquidity. That means that we need concrete security if there is going to be an L2 or another L1, because the pool token originates on the Ethereum chain. With L2s, you get full security, essentially, or rather, the security that the L2 provides in terms of the quality of the bridge, the quality of the movement of the pool token from Ethereum to, say, Optimism or Arbitrum or ZK Sync or any of these. And what that means is that we can very easily expand to L2 with full L2 security. L1s are a different story. L1s, and this is a pretty big conversation, but bridges have been getting hacked. Bridges are not safe. there have been so many hundreds of millions lost to bridges because you can't actually fully securely bridge tokens from one chain to another. A lot of these, like layer zero is a perfect example. They've made it really easy for someone to basically custody the funds for someone else, in the sense that they provide all the infrastructure, and it's up to you to decide on what your oracle is in terms of minting these tokens on the kind of the receiving chain. And I believe a lot of these aren't ready. I don't think they're production ready. I mean, a lot of people are going willy-nilly to all these other chains and being like, yeah, check it out, there's tokens everywhere. No, it's not securely so. And this is something else, for better or for worse. We've been very conservative in how we've moved, but it has meant that we haven't had any issues like that, security issues. But what I like about L2s is that the pool token on L2s is real, is guaranteed to be able to redeem it on L1, on Ethereum. And so because of this dependency, we're going to be focusing on L2s for the short term. So Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, all this tech. And looking to L1s when the bridges are more robust. So something I'm excited about is, I can't remember the name of it, but there's an ERC out there that standardizes the ability to have multiple bridges for a token on like another L1 chain. So from Ethereum to say like Solana or something like that, and means that it gives you more control over who gets to mint that token on this other chain, because Ethereum's the canonical sort of ledger of record. Having another ledger on, say, Solana, you need some kind of checks and balances to make sure somebody isn't just printing pool over there, because there has to be something controlling that. So there are new standards emerging and better bridge tech emerging. So I do think that landscape is going to continue to improve, and eventually it'll be very easy for us to move over there. Another option, and this is a very kind of experimental idea, is if we consider a token like a franchise, we could go and just deploy a brand new pool token somewhere else on, say, Solana, and then airdrop it equivalents to all of the pool token holders everywhere else, so that they have the same ownership. But what would end up happening is that it would likely evolve on its own. So it wouldn't necessarily be tied to the same pool token. It would be a different pool token. But I've always thought that was an interesting way to tackle this problem, is just to create these islands. But for now, we're focusing on the bridges. So we're trying to link everything together, bring it all together into a coherent ecosystem.
Definitely. Well, to wrap our conversation, what can we expect from Pull Together in 2024? And if there's any other thing you wanted to tell us about Pull Together, feel free to do so.
Yeah. Well, what we're working on right now is additional tokenomics. We're going to be launching incentives in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be launching on more chains, or more L2s to be specific, like Arbitrum, ZK Sync, and whatnot. So we're going to continue to expand so that we can be present on all these different chains, especially Arbitrum. It's very DeFi heavy. And I'm sure you viewers will appreciate that. There's a lot of great DeFi tools on Arbitrum. So that's what we're looking to next. And incentives, basically gathering more incentives, continuing to promote Pool Together as the onboarding app for a lot of people, and just making sure that we continue to grow.
Awesome. Brandan, before we wrap up, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, how would you convince someone to use Pool Together, like in 5 or 6 words?
In 5 or 6 words?
Yeah.
Hold this token, win prizes. There's 5 words.
You nailed it. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brandan.
Thanks for having me.
It was awesome to have you. And like the last question, it's a simple one. Like, how can we find more about Pool Together? How can we get into what Pool Together is building?
Yeah. Good question. I did not come armed, but we had a great introductory article on Mirror. Let me just pull it up, because it goes into great depth of V5, what V5 is about, and what we're working on next. And so let me bring that up. and so that we can share it with everyone.
Yeah, the link's gonna be on the description of the podcast, so no worries.
And it's also nice to tell our audience that we also publish a pulled together article explaining about V5 in Portuguese. So also going to be linked down below for people.
Okay, excellent. Okay, this is a good one. Let me add this. I like this one. I'll just paste it into the, oh, is there a chat?
Yes.
There it is. That's a great introductory article written by Charker, community manager. There are other ones as well, but I would say that is the broadest. And so you can go and check things out and see what's new about V5, and also just how to get further involved, whether it's just depositing or even joining our Discord or anything like that. So there's lots of things people can do. We actually just ended a meme contest. So there's even kind of easy, lightweight ways to get involved, even if it's just creating funny pictures. So, all sorts of different things that people can do.
Yes. Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks
Well, guys,
so much,
thank
Brandan,
you so
for
much
coming to the
me.
podcast. Yes,
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely.
you.
I've really enjoyed talking to you guys about Pool Together. It's great to be able to, just share what we've been building for so long, and we're very excited to get it out to your audience. It's been great.
Yes, and I hope our audience, the Brazilian community, get to know more about Pull Together. Deposit some funds. They are available on Optimism, cheaper blockchain there. So try it out and tell us what you guys think. All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
guys.
Brandan.